In a packed courtroom, the air was thick with tension. The defendant, a man in his early 30s, sat with his back straight, his eyes focused ahead. His name was Marcus Williams, and though he had been accused of a crime, his demeanor suggested he wasn't just any ordinary man facing the weight of the law. He had a calm, almost serene presence that made people pause. His suit, though not expensive, was immaculately pressed, and his voice was steady as he spoke. The judge, a middle-aged man named Judge Thornton, had a reputation for being tough. His sharp hawk-like eyes missed nothing, and his word was final. On this particular day, however, he was feeling particularly arrogant. The case before him was a simple one, a minor theft charge, and it seemed like an open and shut case. The prosecutor had done their part, presenting the evidence with the expected confidence, and the defense seemed weak. Judge Thornton, his thick glasses perched on the edge of his nose, looked down at Marcus, who had chosen to represent himself. The judge had a history of looking down on defendants who opted not to use legal counsel. He believed it was a sign of arrogance or ignorance. And as he glanced at Marcus, he saw a man who clearly didn't belong in a courtroom. "Mr. Williams," the judge said with a mocking smile, his voice dripping with condescension, "you're representing yourself." How quaint. Marcus didn't flinch. He merely nodded, his expression unreadable. "Yes, Your Honor. I believe I can handle it." A slight chuckle escaped the judge's lips. The courtroom was silent, all eyes on the exchange between the two. "Well, I must admit, I'm curious to see how this plays out. You may proceed with your defense." Marcus stood up slowly, adjusting his tie with deliberate precision. He wasn't in a rush, taking his time as if every step mattered. The judge and the audience watched, some skeptically, others with growing curiosity. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Marcus began, his voice clear and confident. "I stand before you not as a man of privilege or wealth, but as a man who understands justice. I know that we live in a world where the law is supposed to be blind, but I also know that sometimes it isn't. The law, as it stands today, is flawed, and that is something we all must acknowledge." The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting such a profound statement. But he didn't interrupt, though he was clearly growing impatient with what he perceived as a lengthy monologue. Marcus continued, "I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm just another defendant trying to dodge the consequences of my actions. But I assure you, Your Honor, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here because the law has treated me unfairly, and today I will demonstrate that. The charges against me may seem valid on the surface, but a closer inspection reveals that they do not hold up." The judge's interest piqued, but he still didn't take Marcus seriously. "And how exactly do you plan to prove that?" he asked with a smirk, clearly dismissing Marcus' abilities. Marcus didn't flinch. He simply pulled out a notebook from his pocket and began flipping through the pages. "First, I would like to present evidence that the prosecution has failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I was in the location where the alleged crime occurred. The evidence they presented is circumstantial at best." The courtroom fell silent, all eyes now on Marcus. His words were measured, his confidence growing with every sentence. "Furthermore, the key witness in this case, who claims to have seen me, is not only unreliable, but also has a history of false identification. I have already submitted documents showing that this person has mistaken individuals in the past." Judge Thornton was now paying close attention. His earlier arrogance had begun to dissipate, replaced with an uneasy curiosity. He glanced over at the prosecutor, who seemed a little less certain than before. But the judge wasn't ready to admit any mistakes just yet. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "I see," he said, leaning back in his chair, though the mockery in his tone had diminished. "But that still doesn't explain why you were seen leaving the scene of the crime." Marcus' eyes locked with the judge's. He didn't hesitate. "Your Honor, there is another piece of the puzzle that the prosecution has conveniently ignored. The security footage from a nearby convenience store clearly shows a different individual exiting the premises. The footage is time-stamped, and it's irrefutable evidence of my innocence." At this, the prosecutor's face went pale. The judge, who had been skeptical of Marcus' arguments, now found himself stunned into silence. He had never expected such a well-thought-out defense from a man he had assumed was out of his depth. Marcus' voice remained calm, but carried an undeniable authority. "I ask that you examine the evidence closely, Your Honor. The facts are on my side, and I trust that you, as a man of justice, will see the truth." The judge remained quiet for a moment, as the weight of Marcus' words settled in. It was rare for anyone to challenge the judge's authority so directly, and even rarer for them to do so with such legal acumen. For the first time that day, Judge Thornton had no immediate comeback. The room was still, and the eyes of everyone present were fixed on him, waiting for his decision. After what felt like an eternity, the judge cleared his throat again, this time without the usual arrogance. He was no longer laughing or mocking Marcus. "I will take this new evidence into account," Judge Thornton finally said, his tone uncharacteristically respectful. "We will reconvene tomorrow to discuss this further." As Marcus nodded and returned to his seat, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. The judge, who had dismissed him as just another defendant, was now left stunned. In that brief moment, Marcus Williams had shown the legal system not just the flaws in the case, but the brilliance of his own mind. The judge might have underestimated Marcus at first, but now he couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for the man before him. 4 Mini